All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Ruach the honors of the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Well, peace, blessings, salutations to those for electors out there pushing, laboring, believing, and listening all to this truth with our sincerity. And may the blessing of election be upon your houses. It's a like you, right? As you can see, off of what is on the screen right now, you could pretty much put two and two together on the the title and topic of this lesson. All right, and right now, there's a lot of tensions. All right, between Babylon and Iran. All right, a lot of talks of bombings, a lot of talks of war. And this could very well be the catalyst. That can streamline World War III. Because there's a lot of tensions going on between all these various nations. All right, these opposing nations that doesn't like Babylon, that dislikes Babylon. So, this could very well be the catalyst to that. All right, so right now, right, the article is from the End Time Headlines is titled "To Bomb or Not to Bomb." It says Trump now says he'll decide whether to bomb Iran in the next 10 to 15 days. All right, read a little bit on it. It says, speaking at the inaugural meeting of the White House's Board of Peace in Washington, Trump said negotiations held earlier this week in Geneva have been good, but warned that Tehran must agree a meaningful deal on its nuclear program or face consequences. Otherwise, bad things happen, he said, without detailing specific military plans. And one thing about Babylon I want to point out, right? One thing about Babylon is that they are, pretty much a bully, on the planet Earth, man. They're a bully to all these other nations, man. Right? They go to these other nations and tell them, ultimately, hey, this is what you can and can't do with your military force. We need you to do this. We need you to be in line with this. And if you don't want to listen to us, then shit, we're going to war and we're going to try to take everything, man. Babylon really, uses their military strength, to force their might throughout the planet Earth, man. And it's getting to a point these other nations are getting fed up with Babylon, man. All right. It's like having that bully in school, that keep bullying you, and then, the kid that's getting bullied gets fed up and then he fights back, And that's ultimately what Babylon America is. They're a bully on the planet Earth, man. All right, because they're always, sticking their heads or their noses, right, in all these other nations' foreign affairs. Okay. Let me grab this real quick. All right, this is Revelation 11:14. It says the second woe was past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Right, there was already a World War I. Right, there was already a World War II. Right. And right now, we see getting ready to happen with, especially with, all these tensions that's happening, throughout the four corners of the world, right? Is, we getting ready to see that World War III is getting ready to happen, man. It's inevitable, man. All right. The average individual could see that World War III is going to be a reality, man. That's why they have talks, they've been speaking, for the past, year or so, maybe a little longer about, the draft coming back, and so forth, man. Right? The Babylon ministers are talking about they're having trouble with getting numbers. People joining their military. They're trying to do all these incentives and incentivize the masses. So they could join the military. But we are seeing the route that Babylon is going towards, man. We see the route that the planet Earth is getting ready to go towards, man. And this is all prophecy, man. We're seeing prophecy, getting ready to be fulfilled before our eyes. All right. And another thing too, I looked up here, right? I just typed in, Iran's countries. Iran's allies, right? The countries that are allies of Iran on Chat GPT. And one of them they didn't have on here, which is Pakistan, right? But here we go. It says Russia and China, right, are strategic allies of Iran. And we already know Russia and China's position when it comes down to Babylon America, right? Go down, you see Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, right? It says Venezuela, North Korea, all right, and then it gets down a little bit to the to the Armenia, Qatar, and Oman, right, or Oman, right, and they also, right, Iran is also a member of the BRICS, right. So you have all these nations, right, that are allies with Iran. So if Babylon goes toe to toe with Iran going to war, these other nations are gonna step in to help Iran. And now when that happens, right, Babylon's allies gonna step in, right, to assist Babylon also. So as you can see, right, it's one of those things that pulls all these other countries into, man. Right. So this could very well be the catalyst to cause that, that World War III, right? You know, so we're seeing, the tensions of this place constantly increase, man. Right. And when you go down to one thing I saw here too on North Korea, right, it says, they shared an anti Babylon stance, man. Right. And all these other nations, they hate Babylon, man. When you look at these other nations speak about Babylon, they speak on Babylon as if Babylon is a third world country, man. Right? And when you really look at it, it is compared to these other nations, man. When you see the technology that they have in countries like what is it? I think that's it's either China or Japan. With how advanced their technology is, they look at Babylonians and they despise Babylonians, man. Right? Because the Babylon is a joke to these other nations, man. Right? A few decades ago, Babylon was a force to be reckoned with, man. It was a powerhouse. All right, these other nations were afraid of Babylon, man. They didn't even want to try them, man. Nowadays, Babylon is looked as a joke. They no longer have that same fear that they were striking in these other nations and the leaders of these other nations, man. Right? Because what were they hanging over their head? Their nuclear capability, right? Their military force, right? But now they're not the only nation that has nuclear capability, right? These other nations have it as well, right? They have that saying, they didn't stop making guns when they made yours. And Babylon was in the mindset that they stopped making guns when they made theirs. All right. But now they come to that rude awakening, man. Right? Because even when you go back to this article, right, the main thing, right, when it goes down to the agreement, right here, it says, I'm gonna read it again. It said Trump said negotiations held earlier this week in Geneva have been good, but warned that Tehran must agree to a meaningful deal on its nuclear program or face consequences. And that's a common thing that you see with Babylon. When it comes down with speaking with these other nations or trying to get these agreements or treaties and so forth, it always has to do with these other nations' nuclear programs, man. Right? Their nuclear capability, man. Right? And that was, when they did that strike, I believe it was on Iran, right? They did that strike. They did it on when they hit them with that bunker buster. That was where they had a lot of their nuclear weapons stored, man. Right? So that's one thing, man. Babylon, they do not they be afraid when they see these other nations have nuclear capability, man. Right? It puts them on their toes, man. Right? Because that kind of gives them a little rude awakening to let them know, like, hey, shit, we could get touched. Okay. I'm gonna read a little bit more on this, right? It says Trump's remarks in which he suggested that earlier either a deal could be reached or the United States might take further action came against a backdrop of intense U.S. military buildup in the Middle East and heightened fears of renewed hostiles. U.S. and Israeli officials have indicated to Axios that a potential military operation against Iran, if ordered, could be a large, weeks-long campaign rather than a limited strike. The president's statement also appeared to narrow the time frame for a decision, with Trump telling reporters that 10-15 days would be the maximum window before he makes the final call. This timeline aligns with earlier warnings from U.S. officials that Iran needs to respond substantively to American demands over its nuclear enrichment and missile programs by the end of the month, man. Right? So again, right? Babylon don't they move like a bully, man. It's like, hey, you better stop, what you got going on with your nuclear missiles. We need to come to an agreement that we like on our terms, right? We don't care if you like it or not, but this is what we want. Either you gonna follow this or not, or if you don't, then we gonna attack you, man. Right? They move like a bully, man. Right? That's how Babylon moves, man. All right. And ever since this happened, also Iran's eco- econ- economic system, right, their money, right, the economy basically went downhill, man. Right, because the value of the Iranian currency plummeted, man. Right, plummeted badly. I believe it's to the point that 750, right, 750 US dollars roughly is like an astronomical number over there. I think it's like $1 billion over there, or like 1 million over there, man. In their currency, man. Right? Going to show you how bad that they were affected, man, throughout this time. And that's one thing that Babylon does, right? When other nations don't, play ball or listen to them, right? They start to attack their economy, man. Right? You seen that with the sanctions that Babylon had put on Russia a few years ago, man. Right? With the import and export. Right? You see that even with the tariffs that get put on the import and export to kind of affect these other nations, man. Right? That's how Babylon moves, right? If you don't fall in line, they say, fuck it, we're going to play with your money now. And these other nations are fed up, man. Right? Let me grab this. It's Isaiah 34:5, right? It says, for my sword shall be bathed in heaven, and behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment, right? And that's exactly what's about to be a reality to these Babylonians in this place, man. That's what's about to be a reality in America, man. Right? Because all these Babylonians believe that this will not be a reality. They don't think war is going to be at their front doors, man. They don't think destruction is nigh, man. They're at ease. They're drunk off of the Babylonian wine, man. Majority of people aren't even paying attention to this happening right now, man. They're just going on with their days, man. Right? But yet do they know at any moment, right? Says 10 to 15 days, he's thinking about, making that decision at any moment. That war could pop off, man. And another thing too, right? As we get close to the end, right? They have rules and regulations to wars, right? They call it damn, what is it called, man? I think it's what's it called? I think it's like rules of combat or something like that, right? Where things you can and can't do, right? Type of weapons you can and can't use, right? Now, don't be surprised as we get close to the end. All those rules of combat and rules of war is out the window, man. Right? It's gonna be out the window. Don't be surprised. Okay? Because Babylon don't play fair. So why would these other nations play fair, man? Right? You got these other nations got drones, they got nuclear capability, they got the cyber warfare, right? They could, hit blackouts and so forth, man. All right. This is about to be a reality in Babylon, America, man. This is Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, verse 5. And it reads, yeah, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathering unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And that is Esau Edom for you, man. Right? A proud man, right? Not a keeper at home, right? Esau Edom cannot mind their own business at all. They always have to be, putting their nose in other people's business, man. And I'm pretty sure every Drake could attest to this, man. You could be, minding your own business at the store or at the grocery store or having a conversation with a friend, or a family member, and then here comes an Edomite bumping your head into, like, hey, what you guys got going on? You know? And I'm saying this for first hand experience, man. Right? But that's Esau Edom for you, man. They're constantly putting their nose into these other nations' business and telling them how to operate, telling them how to run their countries, and telling them, hey, if you don't listen to us, if you don't listen to what I'm telling you, then there's gonna be a problem, you know. So now we are seeing these tensions increase. Right? A few years ago, right, or a few decades ago, right, Babylon coming at Iran like that, they probably would have just fell in line, But now, nah, they like fuck that, you know. We're not bending that knee anymore, man. And that's the same spirit as all these other nations that are anti-Babylon are having. All right, so we are seeing the times that we are in, and it's very crucial in these final days to make sure that we are right with Yahweh Shem Shai, right? Because we're gonna need that hedge of protection over us in these final days, man. All right, because without it, we're cooked, man. All right, but hey, I'm gonna wrap it up with that. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect of Israel. With that being said, I'll give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakwakadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone Well. Peace, blessings, salutations to those for elect that is out there pushing, laboring, believing, and listening on to this truth with heart sincerity. Until next time, shalom. And the ball, Kwame Sharala, shalom.